Hey, I'm Labi. Today I'm going to talk about lesson plans. A lesson plan is pretty much what it sounds like. Depending on the length of my lesson, I break the lesson down into different segments and then follow these segments so my lesson is more coherent, more focused, and more fun. So the lesson plan is pretty much taking your lesson you're about to teach and breaking into different segments. I tend to start my lessons with a few minutes of conversation. You have to remember the student might just came back from school or from work. They traveled a long way to see you. So instead of just rushing into the lesson of like, grab the guitar, let's start going, it's nice to take a few minutes just to start talking, say, how was your day? Anything new happen? Maybe introduce them to a new song on YouTube, a new band, show them a new app that you downloaded on your iPhone or your iPad for music, just to kind of tune down from the long day. And then start the lesson. It's also a great time to recap on what we did last week. So I'll ask questions like, how much time did you have to practice? Did you have any problems with the stuff we did last week? So after our little conversation and recap, I usually start with warming up. Now everyone has their own exercises for warming up. I'm sure there's tons of them in YouTube. I tend to start with the basic chromatic exercise. Moving into scales, pretty much stuff just to warm our hands up and to get the blood flowing into the fingers. Now again, it depends how long the lesson is. I'm not going to go into 20 minutes of warm-up exercises. After the warm-up, I'm going to tell the student what we're going to do in the lesson today. That's really important because then the lesson, the student has an idea of like, okay, well, we finished warm-up. We're going to do some scales, and then that song I really want to learn is going to come up next. So it gives them something to look forward to. So it's pretty much telling them what we're going to do, and then start the lesson. So after the warm-up, it's a great time to recap what we did in the last lesson. So it's time to see if they had any problems with this, any new songs we learned, any new techniques, any questions about theory, before moving into new information. From here on, it really depends on how long your lesson is and what the level of the student is and what you decide you're going to teach that week. If I'm going to, I'm going to give 5 minutes into sight reading, maybe 10 minutes for ear training, then work on improv. So I have to structure my lesson to fit in all these aspects in the given time that I have. If I only have an hour, maybe I won't do ear training, harmony and theory, improvising scales, and a new song or an old song. I might, break it down into 2 lessons. Sometimes it's too much to learn at once. The next thing I do as far as the lesson plan is everything we go over in the lesson, I write down for the student, whether it be in his notebook or in a piece of paper. What I do is I write down for the student his task for the next week. The lesson is pretty much a time for us to gather new information and recap on what we did. The main practice, of course, happens at home. So for everything we do, I write down, practice 2 minutes warm-up exercises. I give them a specific time because we want our practice time to be more efficient, rather than just say, okay, practice these exercises, and then they can get caught up 15 minutes just doing one exercise, which is not really the point. So every segment that we go over, I write down the exact amount of time I want them to practice each exercise. The last important thing is everything we do in the lesson I write down as a copy for me as well. That way for the next lesson I can prepare and know exactly what I'm doing. I think there's nothing worse when you come to a lesson and you're counting on your student to bring their notebook and say, okay, what did you do last week? And then they didn't bring the notebook and you're like, oh, okay, what do we do now? So I want to come prepared. If there's songs that I want to prepare for the student for next week, I write them down so I can prepare them in advance. That way the student knows that, you're taking more effort into the lessons and they're more fun rather than just kind of winging it and go, oh, okay, well, let's just jam on the blues. So I write down everything to all of my students. That way I know exactly what I have to prepare. I think in time you kind of get used to your lesson planning, so I don't have to break it down. Every student, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this. You have your own kind of structured lesson, and you just write down the specifics, being a special song that you want to teach, certain scales, or rhythm, exercises. So I hope that helped. It was a short lesson, but we'll see you next time.